Welcome to Las Doctoras podcast, featuring your favorite profas bringing women and gender studies topics out of the university and onto the kitchen table.
I'm Cristina, Chicana, Pinay, queer, Sha, ella, traveler, Earth, Mama Bruja.
I'm Renee, Mexicana, Tejana, Chicana, she, her, ella, Mama Bruja scholar and scribe.
Together, we are the academic and word brujas creating revolutionary spaces outside the walls of the ivory tower to cast spells, read the ancient texts, and tell our sacred stories. We make this magic as an offering to our ancestors, to those who will come after us, and for the change we wish to see in the world. Salud!
Hello.
We're here. That was good. It's good. We'll get better.
Okay, welcome to Las Doctoras podcast, episode
44?
50.
No way. Like I was 44.
Episode 50.
50.
I forgot to even say that. Yeah, this is a big one.
This is a big celebration. I love the number 50. I can't wait to be 50.
Oh gosh, don't even say that. I just turned 40, okay?
I know, but it just sounds like a, I don't know, like bruja, like mujer, like kind of like future abuela self, like tia, doña.
We're really leaning into, we're on that side of the.
We are. We're trying.
So we're here.
We're calling the bed sessions.
We were just like. It has me thinking of the newest Shakira song, right? The Biz Rap sessions.
Totally.
And anyway, yes, we are here coming to you from
my bed,
Christina's bed, but also where Las Locuras was born, out here on the peninsula in Long Beach.
Right, we're here. It's sunny. This feels good. I mean, in the context of my life and the healing that's happening, it feels really good. It feels wonderful for you to be here, you know, in this space. And back here where we did start, where like our creativity was sparked and relationship, you know, I think by the ocean. I mean, that always makes a difference for you. And it makes a difference for me too, you know, so... Welcome everyone. Welcome.
So we've got some updates that I think have kind of sparked some conversations with us that we thought could really be beneficial to bring to the podcast. So if you were, I'm like, what else do we want to say before we go there? Any other updates? I mean, the biggest update, if you didn't see our live on Instagram, is that Cristina is now back in Long Beach. We are back in person together.
Ready to go dancing.
We had, all of that.
Just ready for like this beautiful pillow talk time, right? Whatever you want to call this, like real, just being together and being real. Something, you know, whatever love language is, physical touch, physical presence, like this means a lot to us, I think.
I think there's a certain energy when you and I actually get together in person. I mean, I felt like we did really good for a couple of years online, but I do think there's a certain magic when you and I are in person and we're able to just be in each other's space and create from that place.
Right. I think it goes into other aspects of our lives too, with the kids in school, right? And this sense of that we are, I mean, I don't, like we're not alone, you know, I guess, or that we are exponentially, you know, creating magic because we're together. In person, in space like this, but also like with our kids' spaces, you know, our kid school and and even when it comes to, I think, our comadre circle, you know, here too, I think there is a shift happening, you know, and I'm grateful.
I love it.
So the other big news is Right. And I'm feeling the gratitude for this because I can call and be like, I need help. I was roller skating with a Jaguar, my son, and I fell and I could never have conceived of what actually came of that. We were having a great time. We were wearing padding. Totally. We're doing it right. We're listening. We were taking over the dance floor, listening to music because we were almost the only people there. And I fell in such a way that my main bone in my lower leg, my tibia, it broke. And in my fibula, it's called a boot fracture. I've learned that it can happen. It happens a lot. So good to know. Please be careful out there. I'm not saying don't go roller skating because I definitely want to get back out there with Jaguar when I can so we can go back to that fun moment and kind of reclaim it because it was pretty traumatic. I was on the phone with Renee.
I was like, let me just say, I don't always make dinner. But that one day I was like, I had some fish and Santos really likes fish. I was like, let me make all this dinner. And I'm like in the middle of stuff and you're like, you had this energy. And I felt like, I think in any other circumstance, and if I lived in Long Beach, I would have been like, I'll go get you and take you.
Yeah.
But
also I was trying to talk about what was happening and I wasn't able to articulate how big it was because I just didn't know, too. I think
all I heard you say was
I had a retreat that day. And so you were just the first person in my mind too, which was wonderful to be able to call and get some grounding. Like, what would you do, Renee?
I know that's what I heard. And I think what I heard you say is I heard something pop. And I was like, okay, that could still be a lot of things.
Right.
And you were coming from a place of, I think you were coming from, how do I manage this while I have Jaguar with me?
Yeah.
And so I was trying to be like, I was coming from the perspective of what kind of emergency, because you were like, should I call the ambulance? And your concern was, if I call the ambulance, what's going to happen with Jaguar? Are they going to let him go with me?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's a way more complicated. In my head, I was like, okay, easy decision. Do not call the ambulance because that's going to be so much more stressful for you.
Yeah.
So, and I think you were coming from the perspective of like, how urgent do I need to seek help?
Yeah.
And so I was coming from the place of like, if something's broken, it's broken. Like nothing is going to change that at this point. So I was like, you were like, oh, my dad's going to be here for 30 minutes. I was like, fine, just have him come and take you to the nearest Kaiser urgent care. And
for me, when I first fell, I was just like on the ground, and Jaguar was there and I was like, Papa, you got to go get help, And so there was like a real moment where I wasn't able to do anything but like say, go get help in a real big way.
Wow.
And so then he went to go get the staff and they were minimally helpful. There's a letter coming from that. But after that, he was really shook and he needed to know that I was going to be okay. And so I went into like
mothering.
We're going to be okay. What do you need? If it's my leg, you're right. Or I don't know. I still thought it was my ankle. I still didn't think like, I could break a tibia. I didn't.
Yeah.
Seriously.
That's what I thought too. I thought, okay,
I
this
broke my ankle.
At worst, you broke your ankle. Which, not that that's easy, but at worst. Yeah.
So anyways, so I just wanted, and I knew only a certain amount of people would like my son really feel comfortable with, and my dad is one of them. And so then that's why I called him to come. We went to urgent care. Long story short, I got to see an orthopedic surgeon pretty quickly. I have since like vetted my story with him. And I was like, did I do what I needed to do? And he said he thought if I called the ambulance, they may or may not have taken Jaguar, and the treatment would have been the same, and the delay, a little bit of a delay, like you said, and like I was on the phone with my friend who's a physician's assistant too, and he said the same thing, that the end game is still the same. But it was wild, to hear them say, you broke your tibia, you need surgery, and you're going to have a titanium rod inserted into your leg. It's been a lot. I am very grateful. I feel like I've been watching the Marvel movies, actually.
Well, I keep telling you, you're a bionic woman now.
I think it's helping me feel like I'm the future or something like that. I've also spoken with friends who I now know have also broken their tibia, maybe from accidents like this or from skiing or snowboarding, and they continue to live like great lives, and the metal is there. It does get cold on cold days,
Really?
like, and
wow.
I was thinking, and this is totally because I, eating disorder and like in recovery, like how much will I weigh now, and I haven't weighed myself in a long time, but I was thinking, how much does this weigh in my body, like,
I mean, I think that's a really important thing to, wow. I mean, I'm hearing that for the first time from you. And I think that there's, because where we're trying to get at in talking about this, is how does this really test our resilience? How does this test your mental health? How does this, really add a really big challenge with that? So for you to say something like that, that's a really big deal, to recognize that this triggers all of that other stuff that, like you said, in recovery, but that's something you don't really think about, right? That's not, you're thinking like,
it was like one of those midnight thoughts, that I have.
But it's real, but it's a thought that you have to like, you have to talk yourself down from, I imagine.
Yeah. Like, well, like I was thinking I would qualify that next time I go to the doctor and they're like, let's weigh you. But I do have a titanium rod. And I also say every time I go in, I was like, you can weigh me, but I don't want to see it. So please don't tell me, like, no. So I thank you for saying that. I think you're right. So this has created all of these different shifts, or all these different conversations in my mind and in my heart and my body about, because we came down here from the Pacific Northwest. We were just getting into this beautiful routine of biking and just being outdoors and just loving that, after being like in the rain in the woods for a while. And this was a really big
wrench.
Yeah, totally. I just remember thinking that night, I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do all these things. Like, I just joined the gym from a place of great, like,
you were
joy.
So excited. You were so excited about the gym to the point where I was like, what? Because I not that I don't like the gym, but the way you were talking about it, it was like, it was the best thing that ever happened to you.
I definitely was channeling some part of me that, I grew up at the gym with my dad. My dad's a gym guy, and I don't know, it's not always been great, but there's a zoning out that happens for me there, like with like the elliptical or maybe the classes. I don't know. I know.
You were really excited.
I'm a gym. I was so excited, and I had to say I can't come for a long time, and I'm having to be much more. I have to settle down a lot more, have my leg raised a lot more. So there's just a lot of, stillness that I was not prepared. I'm frustrated about, and I'm also trying to, right. This time I may not ever have again. It's like kind of after giving birth, my 6 weeks of quarantining,
the cuarentena.
I've been trying to really live into that, but also recognizing that there's just some different frustrations. Another one, I was supposed to teach in person. That's why, and but kind of one of the big pushes to being here in Southern California, and I can't teach in person. I now kind of get to know a little bit more of what it means to have a disability and get accommodations, official ones from the university. And I was talking to my therapist this week about how I'm apologetic about that to the university, and I don't want to be. It's kind of like, the body's not an apology. Again, in a new way for me. So yeah, all of it. Here's what's great. I just no, this is my 7, right? Or this is the part of me that's like, okay, that was bad.
Like, here's how my life is shit right now.
I have been able to reach out, with your help. I live in a really tiny apartment, a loft, so that I can be by the water. I always imagined we would be going places. No one would come over here, actually.
Oh, interesting.
And no, all of my loves, all of my community, are coming here to support us. So the meal train you set up, people, other mamas, other saying, hey, can I come over and help clean? And can I, do all these things? And it's just like, I mean, someone came yesterday and they cleaned bunny cage out, like they offered to do that. I was like, thank you, like I feel very much surrounded.
I know that, like, the way I saw it, I think when it all went down, I immediately went into like, yeah, what, like, what do we do? What can I do? But I also felt like you are so good at being in community with others and like being of service. Like, you're the extrovert of us, right?
I've been thinking about that recently with some of the schools. I was like, Rainy, I wish I was there just to be like the smiling face for us.
Like I think there's it was like a meme or something that said, I need an emotional
support, like party.
I need an emotional support extrovert to go with me to parties.
Yes.
And I feel like I send that to her, and I was like, you're my emotional support, like, extrovert, because I tend to be more introverted. But I think that because you're so extroverted and because you have so much community and know so many people, and not from a place of like, because I think some people have all kinds of friends, but they're not really genuine. You have a lot of really genuine, loving people in your life, and you put that effort into those relationships. So the way I saw it was like, it's time for you to cash in. Like, not in that way, but really, like, you have put a lot of effort and love into so many relationships. And here's an opportunity for you to, for them to, not that they haven't before, but for you to be okay with, I've put this effort out. I can receive. I can be in a moment of receptivity and just receive all the help and the love that I've always put out, and that you deserve that, and that's okay. Thanks. And so I was really, I was like, oh, she's got this. Like, she's got so many people that love her. They're gonna just come, and I feel like they have. You've had a lot of, even with Jaguar, like being able to take him and pick him up from school.
I can't drive, so Jaguar's being taken to school, arranging that to happen, and trusting, and that's a new level too. But like but it's come through. My neighbors here, my family too.
And I hear so like I hear a lot of the conversations that you and I've had when people ask me like, how is she? And I'm like, I think she's doing good. And I think because you and I are like, physically, you're on a path.
Yeah.
But I think it's more of like, where are you emotionally with so much? And I know at the very beginning, just your personality, probably our personality, is to be like, okay, how do we intellectualize this? How do we rationalize this? How do we go into making ourselves make sense of, like, why did this happen? Okay, this happened, and I think we were both kind of like in that, but I also being of the mind of like, it doesn't really matter at this point, because you're dealing with the day-to-day reality of this new reality that you're living, even if it's temporary, even if it's just for a moment, like, you're still living with it. And so you have to kind of be okay with like just saying, like, why it happened, or whatever opportunities it gives, it's still fucked up in the moment, and it still sucks ass. Like, it's hard.
It's so hard for me to stay there. Like, it's hard for me to like be in that place of this sucks, and like get up and brush my hair, or get up and make like I survive off of like
being functional, highly, overly. That's not just you.
No,
I mean, that's our world,
where our world,
where levels of success and worth are often made by how productive we are.
But I even mean more than that too. Not you're right. I've taken walking for granted. I've taken getting to the bathroom, or just I'm used to like hustling, cleaning real quickly, and all those things. No, but I also mean like the story, the narrative that says like that everything's gonna be okay, or I don't know, the bigger ones than that, like bad things happen, bad people. No, not like that either. Like, but they're
everything
all there.
happens for a reason.
Everything happens for a
so
reason.
that's I think that's the core of the conversation that we want to have, because that's what you've been struggling with, this notion that,
yeah,
and I think this comes from both the religious background that you have, that we have, and also the spiritual grounding that we love to be in. There is, I think religion would say this is a consequence of whatever, right? Like, or karma.
Totally.
Right?
It's like the punitive system of the punitive story, if you will, the story about being punished.
Yeah.
Like that's what.
But like, so you kind of said it, like bad things happen to bad people.
Yeah.
So the internalization that this happened. So I think from the religious perspective, you would internalize the idea of like, oh, this happened to me because I did something wrong. Right. Yeah. And I think on the other hand, and this is really, we've been wanting to talk about spiritual bypassing. Right. And the concept when people say, because I think I did say this too. I was like, well, we can see this as an opportunity to like slow down and to like, rely on community and I think that the intention with that is good. And at the same time, you've expressed.
Yeah. It's how my brain or how my that basically because of the upbringing. That's what I'm talking about. Right. Because I know there's people out there in my upbringing that are thinking like that I did too much, or I wasn't with a male partner at the time, all these different things. I put myself in a vulnerable place, that this happened. And here's the truth though, the truth is we were having a ball. Like we were having so much fun. So then that enters it, like, from that old story, like, pleasure, right, like having too much fun,
overindulging,
right? Like we were just isn't that because
I'm like getting mad. I'm like, fuck. I mean, and it all resonates.
I should have known you could fucking break a tibia roller skating.
You should have been more hyper vigilant. That's the narrative.
Yeah.
That you should have. Well, I was just thinking. I was just hearing that too.
I got it. We're good.
And I was just because the sound kind of. Anyway, I was hearing that too, when I know that in times in my life when I've either gotten hurt or when things happened, there was the immediate sense to be like, well, what did you do to cause that? What did you do wrong that led to that happening? And sometimes I even do that with my kids when they get hurt. Like, well, you shouldn't have been jumping, or you shouldn't have been doing this, or you shouldn't have been doing that. And so there's the immediate internalization of, oh, I made this happen. It is my fault.
And then, but if I don't go there, then in the old framework, right, I go to like, why did God do this? Or why did,
I've heard you say this, like, why did the ancestors, did I have to learn this lesson this way?
I'm really glad I don't have to drive to work and commute, but did I really have to break my leg?
Yes, and that's what I heard you, because that's what the context that I've heard you say this in feeling like on the other end, right, when we talk about spirituality from a framework of like, oh, everything happens in life for a reason, and we can learn lessons, and sometimes there's fate and there's destiny and all of these things, or the ancestors sometimes are, trying to teach us lessons. And I heard you really clearly say, why did the ancestors need me to learn it this way?
I mean, I want to say that, and then I very quickly, I want to reframe it, I do.
Yeah.
Because I'm aware that this is like one of the biggest accidents or biggest like traumas of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to make sense of it, but it goes, what comes to mind are all the other traumas big traumas of my life, including like an abusive marriage, and recent ones in the last year. Like, so they kind of come together for me, and it's a little tricky. It's like, but so they come together me and ask like, well, what was the purpose? It gets convoluted with my ex marriage because I really think I was like trained, brainwashed to be broken like that. To marry someone who was like a pastor and also like angry and also abusive. So that's very different context in this, but they get all kind of wrapped up together instead, of seeing myself as someone who is learning and growing and interacting with different things in the world, especially as a Gemini rising. I do a lot of things, right? Like, and I don't have to judge that part of me. I can just observe, and then observe what happens in those contexts, and then talk about what my agency is, in those moments.
I'm gonna pause
Is
because
it not working?
I'm a little concerned about.
Oh, it just shifted out.
Seems like it's working.
He didn't come into your mic or something?
No, I guess it should be okay. I don't know why the camera's not working now, though.
I think we turned it off. It got turned off accidentally.
Oh. I shouldn't have messed with it.
You want to check the connection just in case?
It's on that side.
No, I mean the connection to the Wi-Fi.
No.
It says it's still there.
No, the Wi-Fi is fine.
Okay.
There you go. Nope. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Oh, it's this. That's what it is?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
There we
There you go.
Okay.
Just got connected.
Sorry. Technical. Oh. Gotta love it. Okay, let's hope it works. Okay.
We're back. Thank you.
We're back.
Well, thank you for knowing these things. Gosh.
Yeah, I hope the mic is working. We'll just pray.
I like how you've got the backup going. You're ready. So good. So good.
It's like we're back to season 1.
I guess we have some more know-how or some more help, but still.
Yeah.
Talk about yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. We're gonna go with it.
Yeah.
So yes,
I want to get down basically because I can go through this whole thing. I'm in therapy now. Thank you, Renee. I know I need space to be able to process all this, and the old stories, the new stories, not the new stories, like the real stories, to me. And but what came up the other day, which I think we can talk about, was in a circle that I'm a part of, seeing the phrase, this wasn't an accident, and then pausing there and recognizing that whatever that the leader meant by that is different than maybe I'm translating it because of the toxic narrative that I grew up in, so seeing it, if it's not an accident, then it's controlled either by me or a diosa, or something like that, or the ancestors. Instead, I really loved your reframing of this. And so I thought I'd let you speak to that.
Like, how did I reframe it? I remember.
Your own grief with your trauma and your dad, and people like saying it was his time. So which I can't even, like, in a just much bigger
yeah. So when I heard you kind of speak into the idea of like, this is not an accident, like the whole notion of everything happens for a reason, or this was meant to happen, and yet you being so frustrated, like, why the fuck did I have to break my leg in order for this to happen? And I made the comparison to when I lost my father. And I, mind you, it's been 8 years of processing and grieving to be able to come to a little more clarity around this position. But I think the way that I've seen it is, especially immediately when somebody dies, there's this urgency to be like, it was his time, or, everything happens for a reason, or God, it's part of God's plan. And I'm like, why the fuck was this God's plan? Like, what, or the notion of it's his time, because that gets into a larger question too, because even my mom would say things like when she was initial in those initial stages of grief, to say like, well, if it's his time, then it must be my time too. Like she goes like, I'm just ready to give up. And I'm like, well, what does that even mean? Right. And it was kind of, it kind of had her be in this frame of mind, like, I have nothing to live for, and I know obviously that comes from the enormous amount of pain that she was feeling at the time. But I was frustrated, because I was like, what about me? Like, you got a lot of shit to live for,
Totally, yeah.
And then there was a lot of people around me grieving in their own ways, and that was then clashing with my own way of grieving. And so I think that, and then I look at the things that have happened in my life since the passing of my father, and a lot of really amazing things have happened, like this podcast.
Yeah.
And I think that there are ways, I have to acknowledge that there are ways that my journey of grief has led me to doing the things that I've done, has forced me to open up a path, a deeper spiritual path, in a way that I don't know if I would have done had I not been in mourning, had I not been in grief. And so I can look back and say, wow, what an opportunity it was to be in grief, because it kind of opened me up to these other things. And I can now see it from a place of the gifts and the beauty and the opportunity. And now I can say, for whatever reason, yes, things were meant to happen that way. And at the same time, it's fucked up. Right. And at the same time, like, so I don't think that it's a matter of that. And I think when bringing it back to your case, I don't think that the idea of you breaking your leg, oh, well, that's not an accident. I do genuinely think accidents happen. Like, I know everybody said, especially in the spiritual world, the idea of like, there's no accidents. I do think that the accidents can happen. And because of those accidents, it may be an opportunity for things to be opened up. But I don't think it happened because of that. Like, there's a separation between what happened and what opportunity it offers, versus you broke your leg so that you could have these opportunities. Like, that feels like spiritual bypassing. And I said this, it would be similar for us to say, this is kind of scary to say, but I think it would be similar for us to look at like even the most recent deaths of these of Black men by cops, to say, oh, well, they died for a reason. That's fucked up to say, like, oh, well, this egregious violence happened so that we can all open our eyes to violence. That is, I think that's dehumanizing to say that. And so I do think that is spiritual bypassing at its worst. And so I think we need to shift. And not that, people who say that is their intention, but because of our religious background, because of the trauma that you've had in abusive relationships, you internalize those messages without the real concrete sifting through the messiness of your own trauma. You can internalize them in a way that's not actually helpful. So we do need to kind of have space to say, I understand the idea behind things are not an accident, but that doesn't actually work for me. And I need a different framing to understand that an accident happened and it sucks and it's fucked up, and I'm allowed to sit with that. And I can also say, okay, how can I make the best out of this situation?
I think it's good. I mean, actually, talk about religious background. I was almost an Episcopal priest. This
Yes.
long time ago.
You always drop these like random. You're like, I almost like, or I lived in China for so many years, or I lived, and I'm like, what? Who are you? How many lives have you lived?
And I'm realizing from a theological background, this is the old conversation about free will or like God ordained. Like I just realized I just got caught in that like vortex for a while there, but. But I love the reframing. I was telling you, I listened to Alice Walker talk about how she's blind in one eye from a childhood accident. But because of that, she went on to go to grad school, get scholarships or something like that. And I was just like, but that's like similar telling her like, oh, that happened for a reason. Mm-hmm. And I really do think it's what gifts are there, that come from trauma or pain, I guess, like that we can still like, I mean, is it like the Inside Out movie, like that we show our kids, is it kind of like you can't have the joy
without the pain,
yeah, or that the pain can be turned into all that art, that creativity, all of that beauty, like, there's.
Well, I think this comes back to even a conversation that we often have about our kids.
I love it. I thought you were going to talk about me being like Frida here in the bed when you first saw me.
When I first walked in here, you were wearing this Mexican embroidered dress with your leg all casted up, and I was like, oh my God, she's Frida right now. Like,
I was like, I just needed like above here some mirror,
Yeah, and you needed your little like paints.
Yeah. No, so our kids.
It has me thinking about the idea of as for us, because we experienced so much trauma, and I even hate to say it. Anyway, so much trauma in our lives that when we had kids, we made concerted choices, right? And very direct decisions about how we were going to parent our children so as not to perpetuate the trauma that we had. And yet, in that, we have to recognize that the trauma is so deep, and so the generational trauma goes so far back that we cannot undo.
Yeah.
We cannot prevent everything, right? We can't undo the generations of trauma in one generation, especially because I've always said we were not given the manual on how to do that. We were given the manual on how to traumatize our kids, but we were not given the manual on how to do that, especially in a world. And Ana Castillo told
we were given the research.
Well, Ana Castillo told us, right? It's hard to to live into this world where we want to process and heal when we're continuously being traumatized.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like we were traumatized and now we live in a better world, and so we just need to heal that and live into this better world. No, the trauma is continual, right? And so I think that when we think about our kids and this notion of we don't want them to be traumatized, the reality is they still live in a world that's going to traumatize them, whether it be at our hands, which can happen, or at the hands of others. And so for us to want to keep them in this bubble, or to assume that there is some magical place where they're not going to be harmed, is not going to be helpful, right? Yeah. Of course, we can do that as much as we can. It's not like we just let them to the wolves.
Yeah.
But we can both protect them and also teach them how to be resilient, right? But also the tools. Yeah. The difference between us and see, the sound keeps going in and out. That's why I'm hearing it. Anyway.
Okay.
So we've got our back up here. I think the difference between
really?
Hello. I think it's okay. So I think the difference between us, how we were parented and how we are parenting is that our parents, and maybe even grandparents, were coming from a place of just survival.
Yeah.
Like, who has time to deal with trauma?
Yeah.
When we're just trying to live to see another day.
Yeah.
Right. And in fact, trauma, like a lot of abuse within the families, came from their attempt at protecting them from the abuse that could potentially happen outside.
Yeah.
Right? Which is a whole other podcast episode. We don't need to get into that.
Which we've done, I think.
Yeah. But and so here we are of a generation that's to say, yes, there's trauma outside. We're gonna try our best to not be the perpetrators of the trauma. And we're going to acknowledge that trauma exists, acknowledge that we ourselves might be the ones traumatizing. And so we're going to, rather than our parents who were in denial of it, we're like, well, I love you and you should be so grateful that I did this from a place of love. Cool. It still was fucking traumatizing. Right.
Totally.
And so we can say, yes, I did the best I can. And I probably fucked you up a little bit.
Yeah.
Here are the reasons. I'm going to acknowledge that happened.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make the resources available for you to be able to be on a healing path that took me a lifetime to acknowledge and seek the help for, right? Like that is the gift that we can offer in this generation, right? We can't prevent shit from happening, but we can give them the sources, the resources to be able to heal from the things that happen, right? Or give them a healing path.
And we can model it too. So like,
exactly.
I've been really short with Jaguar because I'm a Virgo and I like the house a certain way. And he's 7. And so I was like, I've been short. I'm so sorry. I need to have more patience. I'm going to seek some help. I'm going to call Leslie from Latinx Parenting and have a conversation. So I'm just trying to like acknowledge like, I'm frustrated, it's not you, it's me. I love us to work together and I want to have more patience. I'm going to seek some help even now, so.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I think we're going off on a tangent here, but in that, I think you're showing him your humanity too, right? And that we're all humans, regardless of, because I do think there's sometimes this pedestal with moms, because sometimes I'll see my kids, they just love me so much and they're like, you're the mom ever. I'm like, yeah, but I'm also human. Like, and I'm gonna fuck up, and I'm gonna, because then they're able to see that within themselves, right? They're able to say like, oh, I'm gonna mess up too, and I'm not gonna be perfect, and that's okay. That's not what makes me a good person, right? What makes me a good person is being able to apologize, being able to seek help, right? Or being able to do these things. So I think bringing that back to like this conversation around like how we make sense of things that happen, it's to say that, I mean, where does this bring us back to? I think there's
it's funny how I still want to be like in that. My brain goes quickly like, oh, maybe this happened so I could model like what it's like to. It's so funny. It's just
again, and maybe you can do that, but this didn't happen because you know what I mean? Like you could, and so it comes back to say like bad things happen not because you do bad things, but bad things happen and then they give you an opportunity to practice right these things. And I think I think we live in the world where it's like, well, if we just do everything right, then we're going to avoid bad things from happening. Like, and I 100% have been living there too. Like if I am just hyper vigilant about everything I do and I just overthink everything and I do it considering every possible angles of how things go wrong, then I'm going to be fine, right? Then it'll be okay. Then my life will be perfect. Then I'll reap the rewards of doing everything perfectly. And all that ends up doing is have me second guess every fucking thing I do.
Well, I feel like this year has been the year to like dismantle all of that for me. That's the thing. I think that's why I'm also just like really angry about this, is because this year, a year ago around this time or close, we Oliver transitioned to spirit side, and then there were wildfires, and then my co-parent went MIA, and
let's just put that out there.
I know, right? But it's in the context of this whole year that this just feels like, well, great. Like I don't know. I would like to say I'm officially aware that I don't have control, but
ooh, that's a big one.
I don't know if that's true. I think I still have control. That's why
your Virgo's like, no.
I'm bossing Jaguar around, like, pick up this, like,
oh,
I'm still trying, like,
so see, it's a balance between, and this is because it's not all or nothing. And you and I mean, if there's an overarching theme for our work, it's fuck all the binaries.
Yeah,
right.
totally.
And we have to really live in a lot of the, people call it gray area, but I think it's more messiness, the ambiguity, right? Gloria Saldua calls it. We have to be comfortable in the ambiguity of life so much, and not like, and so I think that like it's finding that balance between we're not trying to spiritually bypass ourselves, but we are trying to lean into a connectivity with spirit, connectivity with ancestors, connectivity with the world. And so we don't want to get stuck in the, we don't have control. That's the spiritual part of it, right? There has to be a certain amount of letting go. That doesn't mean that we have to we can't allow ourselves to feel the pain emotionally and physically and otherwise, right? Like and I think, and it's easier said than done, because I can easily tell you that
and be a mom at the same time, you know,
like that weird feeling. And then there's the material reality of shit, right? Like we still have to wake up and make lunch.
We've talked about it, how much we kind of miss like high school and like being all emo and just being like, I just want to put my music on
and be melancholy,
and just be like just I got 10 minutes for that. Maybe.
Maybe, right? Yeah, we don't get to sit in that very long and always hyper aware of that any second, we got to go back into mom mode, which actually makes me think we need a retreat or something, like away. Like we need to get away where we can feel like we have infinite amounts of time to kind of sit in melancholy. Because I do think that when I was a teenager, and I was able to sit in my own pity, if you will, when I was given enough time to like sit there, then I was able to be like, okay, I feel better now, and I can go and do things. But I think because there is so much responsibility and stuff that we don't give ourselves anytime, really. And if we do, it's always with that sense of like, I only have so much time, so I gotta fucking process this as quickly as I can, so we're trying to rush through healing, or we're trying to rush through our feelings to the point where we just almost end up repressing them, where we're like, this is too much, I just need to like repress the feelings,
because we just want to be good moms, we just want to be like
who's got time to like process shit when I got to like feed my kids and I think also because I think you and I love to live life. Like we love to have fun. Like we love to do fun things.
That was our human design thing, right?
Yeah.
Have fun together or something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think you and I really love doing that. So when we have to confront things that don't feel that way, we're like, fucking A.
Totally. Yeah.
Like, God damn it, now I have to like process this emotionally, and this is gonna take time away from my playtime.
It's true. I feel like it's gonna go in my calculations in the future. I mean, to a certain degree, like, what's the risk benefit, for this situation? Like, I mean, like bungee jumping, I'm not gonna do that ever again, or skydiving. No, but roller skating too, I feel like just. See, like, what's the worst? Oh, see. I'm like, what's the worst case snenario?
That's catastrophizing.
Google, what's the worst case scenario for?
See, and this actually gets me to, I think, something I was talking to you about earlier when we were having this conversation by ourselves was, I sometimes hear often in the spiritual community people talking about things like, well, if we're in tune with spirit, and sometimes if we listen, and spirit is telling us we shouldn't do that thing, then we have to listen. We have to not do that thing. I've heard that several times coming from a lot of spiritual leaders, the idea of like, we have to listen so much to our intuition. And sometimes we have to sacrifice the things that we want to do because our intuition or our, spirit guides are telling us that that's not where we need to be. And to me, that again, without the context of like for me, that's anxiety ridden, because then now I'm like hyper vigilant. Like, should I be doing that? Are my guides telling me not to do that? And without the context of understanding how that can trigger anxiety, it's actually counterproductive to say things like that without considering where people might be coming from. I think it's equivalent to when people I was just listening to NPR and they were having this whole conversation about overweight children. And when people talk about food or talk about fitness even, or talk about anything like that without considering, for example, people who have a history of eating disorders, and start labeling food good or bad or healthy or not healthy, for people who have eating disorders, that's going to trigger the idea that everything is potentially unhealthy. And so, and that's just one example, right? Totally. There's a lot of ways it can trigger it. But so when people say that, even with their intentions and even with maybe even whatever truth behind that, without understanding how it can trigger these other traumas, without a context for the continual trauma that we're living in, it can be counterproductive. So I think and this is not to say that they shouldn't do that or say that, or that, but it's just to say, like, let's just be
trauma informed. That's just it, right? But we don't live in that world. People are just
trauma informed.
I think that's the way that, talking about non-binary ways of being, like, trauma informed, I think is how we're trying to live into all of our relationships, Like when we ask, I think when I called you, I was like, do you have a moment to help me?
as you're like dying of pain. But
wanting to just, I think we're at least just like understanding.
Well, I actually tell my students that that's a practice of consent, because we talk about sexual violence and we talk about consent, and what does consent look like outside the context of sexual violence, right? And then if we normalize consent in our everyday lives, then it's easier to normalize consent within the context of sexual violence. So, or not even sexual violence, but sexual activity, right?
Yeah.
And so I said, how many of you all, like, you get that call from your friend that's just gonna, like, tell you all her drama and you're not in the mood for it?
Yeah.
Right? Like, that doesn't feel good, nor does it feel good, I imagine, when you do the same thing. And so I tried to model for them to say, my friends and I try to be in the habit to say, like, hey, do you have a moment? Do you, like, there's this thing, can I talk to you about it? So then on the other end, they can be and to say, like, oh, you know what, not right now, or, oh, give me I'll call you later, or,
and because there's an understanding, like,
so then there's a consensual relationship,
in a crisis moment yourself,
right?
Right.
So,
and that's life as a parent or as a whatever, and all the things that we do. So the wanting to give that to everyone, and maybe that's it too. Maybe I'm gone into a little bit of, like, victimhood here, like, kind of feeling like, this, oh, it would happen to me, like,
when, see, I think that's okay. Like, it's okay. Like, I don't think it's victimhood to say, to be, why did this happen to me? Like, I think that's okay. So as long as you're not getting stuck there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all of it. And it can be, I haven't seen that Everything Everywhere All at Once, but I really want to, but
I haven't seen it either.
It feels like, oh, we should watch it. Maybe that'd be fun. Just some, like, this is in crisis, and maybe this is what happens. Like, all these things, everything comes back all at once, and really trying to say, I hear you, like, as a grown ass woman, like a mother, right? Like, being like, I hear you, like, and being okay with all of it all at once,
Yeah. So I think this brings us, because we got to wrap up here, because we can talk forever about this.
Yeah.
But I think if we had to leave with, what is this? What are we talking about here? I think that processing when traumatic things happen, to acknowledge that it is a traumatic event. What happened to you? I think you said that you've been able to name that for yourself. Like, this is a traumatic fucking event.
I can't quite remember it.
This is what it feels like. You have a whole ass titanium rod. in your leg, your bionic woman. Like, we can't just skip over that, you know, in order to get to like, oh, how do we, you know, make sense of this? So I think it's okay to be there for a little bit, right? In our, like, when I look back at, you know, the early grieving, or when my dad passed away, my mom was in the, I just want to fucking leave. Like, you know, she was just like, she didn't,
I'm ready to go.
I'm ready to go. She literally would say that she's ready to go. And so at the time,
I mean,
mind you,
look at
she shouldn't have processed that with me. I will say that. As her daughter who was also grieving, she shouldn't have processed that with me.
Yeah.
But
how many things can we say that about a mother?
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I think that was fair for her to be in that place, to be fuck you, fuck everything.
Yeah.
This fucking sucks. I don't think I was in that enough, because I had to help my mom through that.
Totally, yes.
I never allowed myself to say this fucking sucks and I fucking hate it and I wish my dad was still here. I never allowed myself to do that. It's one of my biggest regrets about the grieving process, is I never allowed myself
even
to
to
sit
this day.
Even to this day, I don't really go there too much, because I'm so focused on, look at how much beautiful things have happened since my father passed away and what would have been different if, you know, so I haven't, there's moments where I will sit and be like, oh, or every once in a while it'll like hit me like a lightning and I'll be like, oh.
Totally.
And I think there was some initial moments of that, but I didn't sit in there for very long, not long enough. And so I think sometimes so yeah, so like, it's okay for us to sit in the pity, for us to sit in the victimhood and be like, fuck this fucking sucks. And then with the support and the love and the community, be able to, when we feel like we can, to be like, okay, now let's see this. What are the opportunities that can come because this happened? Not because, you know, this is like the opportunities are not a direct result of it, but the opportunities can happen so that we don't get stuck in that resentment, right? So that we don't get stuck in that
such a
like
big fear
place.
I think you've modeled that. Thank you for encouraging me to be in that place, from a place of, you know, wishing you had. That's powerful. I think also thank you for letting, you know, what's happening in my life change what we're doing, you know, too. I think you've created some space for me in our work. And when I say our work, I mean like our creative joy that we bring into Las Doctoras, but like with different circumstances like this, like that take a different energy. You know, you've really been gracious about creating that space for me, and it is going deep into my heart and my belief system around trusting that, you know, we're tuning into what's happening right now in our lives, and then, you know, our work, our creative flow will come in ebbs and flows, and that will be great, you know. Like, but it is something, and I just want to recognize I'm in a little bit of grief about the energy that this takes away from Las Doctoras, you know. I'm
gonna be honest. You are in your own process, but I feel like it was kind of like, oh cool, we can really slow down now. Like I almost felt like it relieves the pressure from having to feel like we need to, the sense of urgency, like we need to make things happen. It's oh shit is real slow now. Let's just fucking lean into. I was like, let me lean into this energy, because I actually think it's been getting us back to our core of who we are, right? We've always been the people, like everything that we've ever created has come from a place of what brings us joy.
Yeah.
And then when things start to not feel that way, we're like, we have to get back to that place. And I think that I've released any sense of what it needs to be. And I'm like, this gives us an opportunity to just slow the fuck down and create things when we want to create them, not because we have to, or not because there's a sense of obligation. And so I love it. Like, I'm okay.
You're ready for the cuarentena?
I mean, like I was telling you, when I had Cruz, you know, my firstborn, And I was in that mode of like, oh my God, I have to get back to normal. So by the time I had Santos, I was like, oh, I am going to take every fucking second of that cuarentena. And, and I never had an official cuarentena, right? Like I never really celebrated it in that way. But my mom and my grandmother, who maybe in their own ancestral instincts absolutely showed up and were cooking me food all the time. My grandmother was like, you need to eat so that you have enough breast milk. And she was like feeding me every second of the day. And then they were cleaning, right? They were really, really showed up for me. And so I was like, I'm just going to sit back and do nothing. And I'm not going to feel guilty about it. I'm not going to. So that's what I told you. I was like, look, there may not be another time where you get to have people come and cater to you. So just fucking take advantage of it.
I love it. All my midwife and my doula friends be coming over and cooking me food that they would have, cooked for like a birth. I wanted to have another baby. Hey. Right. I wanted to be taken care of.
Yeah.
Like when you have a baby, well, I'm glad. And that actually is a little bit just like, I love that beautiful relief. That's so beautiful. And I appreciate creating some space to talk about it on the podcast.
I love it.
Everyone. Hopefully session 2 from the bedroom will come soon.
Alrighty. Let's see if we can make this work. Bye. Intro and outro song is called Foreign Fog by The Corner House, a band that features our dear friend Danelia Arechiga.